What if the only thing standing between you and the life you want is the story you keep telling yourself? You are not held back by the world outside of you. You are held back by the world inside of you. Every thought you repeat is a rehearsal for your future. The question is, which future are you rehearsing? Your old self is comfortable, but comfort is not freedom. Most people walk through life believing that what is holding them back is external. They think it is the economy, or their upbringing, or a lack of opportunity, or even other people. But the truth is, the biggest limitation exists not outside of you, but within you. It lives in the subconscious patterns that you repeat every single day without even realizing it. These patterns form the invisible chains that keep you tied to the same life, the same outcomes, and the same emotions. Until you recognize these chains, you will continue to mistake them for who you are. The human brain is a record of the past. Every memory you've ever had, every emotion you've felt, every belief you've repeated over and over again becomes hardwired into your nervous system. And when you wake up each morning, your body and your mind are already working together to create the exact same day you lived yesterday. You think the same thoughts, you feel the same emotions, you do the same things, and you experience the same results. This cycle gives you the illusion that life is happening to you, when in fact you are the one recreating it moment after moment. These invisible chains come in many forms. They are the stories you keep telling yourself. I'm not good enough. I'll never succeed. This is just who I am. They are the emotions you cling to because they are familiar, even when they hurt you. Frustration, resentment, guilt, fear. They are the habits you run on autopilot, scrolling endlessly on your phone when you should be creating, avoiding the difficult conversation because it makes you uncomfortable, staying in an environment that no longer serves you because it feels safe. Each one of these is like a thread. Alone, it might not seem powerful, but together they weave a net so strong that it keeps you trapped in the same identity you've known for years. Think about this. By the time most people are 35 years old, their subconscious mind is running 95% of their life. That means only 5% of your conscious mind. Your creativity, your free will, your desire to change is actually in control. The other 95% is a set of memorized thoughts, behaviors, and emotional reactions that operate like a computer program. If that program is built on limitation, on fear, on self-doubt, then no matter how badly you want to move forward, you will find yourself pulled back into the same old reality. Awareness is the first step in breaking free. You cannot change what you are not aware of. Imagine a fish swimming in water. The fish does not even know the water exists. It has lived in it all its life. In the same way, you live inside your patterns. They feel so natural, so familiar, that you don't even recognize them as patterns. They feel like you. But the moment you pause, the moment you become the observer of your thoughts instead of being lost in them, you create space between who you are and the program you've been running. Awareness is not just about noticing the obvious thoughts, but also the subtle ones that run in the background. It's the sigh you let out when you think of trying something new. It's the tightening in your chest when you imagine failing. It's the quick judgment you pass on yourself before you've even started. These micro-reactions are signals. They tell you exactly where your invisible chains are. If you can catch them in the act, if you can see them without immediately identifying with them, then you are no longer unconscious. You have already begun the process of loosening their grip. Your body, too, is part of these chains. Because the body learns from the mind, it remembers emotions as patterns. If you've spent years living in stress, your body has memorized how to feel stress. If you've lived in fear, your body has memorized fear. And so even when you're not consciously thinking of something stressful, your body can trigger the feeling all on its own. This is what makes change so hard. Your body is addicted to the familiar emotions of the past. Awareness requires you to notice when your body is leading you back into an old state, when you feel that familiar heaviness, that irritation, that worry bubbling up. Stop and ask yourself, is this me, or is this the old program trying to run again? Most people never ask that question. They believe every thought they think, every feeling they feel, and so they keep reinforcing the old self. But you don't have to do that anymore. The moment you observe a thought instead of automatically believing it, you weaken it. The moment you notice an emotion instead of immediately surrendering to it, you break the cycle, and the more often you do this, the more you free yourself from the invisible chains. Awareness is like turning on the light in a dark room. Suddenly, you can see what's been there all along. You see the patterns, the habits, the stories that once ran your life, and with that vision comes choice. Because once you are aware, you cannot go back to being completely unconscious again. You might still fall into old habits, but now you will know they are habits. And that knowledge is the key that begins to unlock the prison door. The greatest challenge most people face when they attempt to change their lives is that they are trying to use the same mind that created the problem to solve it. They set new goals, they repeat affirmations, they push themselves with willpower, yet after a few weeks they find themselves right back where they started. The reason is simple. The conscious mind might be willing, but the subconscious mind has already been programmed to run the show. If you want to stop holding yourself back, you must begin the process of rewiring the subconscious. The subconscious is like fertile soil. Whatever seeds are planted there, whether intentionally or accidentally, grow into the reality you experience. For years, you have been planting seeds through repetition. Every time you told yourself you were not capable, every time you felt fear and surrendered to it, every time you rehearsed an old memory of failure, you were programming your subconscious. These repeated thoughts and emotions created deep grooves, like trails in a forest that become easier and easier to walk the more they are used. The subconscious does not argue, it does not judge. It simply accepts whatever is repeated with enough intensity and consistency, and then turns it into your automatic way of being. If you wake up each day and allow the same thoughts to run through your mind, the subconscious takes that as instruction. This is who we are, and this is how life must be. And so, without realizing it, you live by a script you never consciously wrote. To rewire the subconscious is to interrupt that script and begin to install a new one. It requires you to move from the known into the unknown, from the familiar past into the possibility of the future. The brain is not static. Neuroscience has shown us that it is plastic. It can change, it can rewire, it can create new connections. Every thought you think is like an electrical signal firing between neurons. The more you think the same thought, the stronger that connection becomes. This is why habits and beliefs feel so ingrained, but the same principle that created those patterns can also undo them. By repeatedly focusing on new thoughts, by practicing new emotions, you begin to carve out fresh neural pathways. Over time, the old ones weaken from lack of use, and the new ones grow stronger. Rewiring the subconscious is not about fighting against the old self. It is about creating a new self so compelling, so alive, that the old patterns naturally dissolve. Imagine your subconscious as a vast library. Right now, most of the books are filled with stories of doubt, fear, and limitation. You cannot simply throw those books away overnight. But what you can do is start writing new volumes, stories of confidence, possibility, and freedom. The more you read and reread those new stories, the more they become the default. One of the most powerful ways to begin this process is through the practice of becoming aware of your automatic thoughts and consciously choosing different ones. If you notice yourself thinking, "I can't do this," you pause and replace it with, "I am learning to do this." If you catch yourself saying, "I always fail," you shift it to, "Every day I am moving closer to success." The subconscious learns through repetition, so the more often you redirect your thoughts, the more the new program takes hold. But thought alone is not enough. The subconscious also speaks the language of emotion. Every time you pair a thought with a strong emotion, you impress it deeply upon the subconscious. This is why people remember painful experiences so vividly. The intensity of the emotion burned it into their memory. You can use this same principle to your advantage. When you combine a new empowering thought with elevated emotion, joy, gratitude, love, you supercharge its effect. Instead of just thinking about change, you feel it as if it has already happened, and the subconscious accepts it as truth. Your body plays a role here as well. If your body has been trained to feel stress for decades, it will resist new emotions at first. You might think a positive thought, but your body still feels anxious or tense. This is the old program pulling you back. Rewiring the subconscious requires persistence. Each time your body tries to return to its familiar state, you gently bring it back into alignment with your new intention. Over time, the body learns to match the mind. The subconscious begins to serve your new future rather than your old past. Visualization is another key to this process. When you close your eyes and mentally rehearse the future you desire, the brain fires the same neural patterns as if you were actually living that experience. The subconscious does not know the difference between a vividly imagined event and a real one. By consistently rehearsing the life you want, you train your brain and body to expect it. You are literally installing a new program. The more real you can make it in your inner world, the more likely it is to manifest in your outer world. The process of rewiring is not instant. Just as the old self was built through years of repetition, the new self must be reinforced daily. The key is consistency. Every moment you catch yourself falling into an old pattern and consciously choose differently, you are breaking down the old wiring and strengthening the new. Every day, you take a few minutes to feel the emotions of your desired future. You are signaling to the subconscious that this is now your reality. The mind has an extraordinary ability that most people overlook. It cannot fully distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is actually experienced. This is not just a poetic idea, it is grounded in neuroscience. When you imagine an event with intensity and detail, your brain fires the same neural circuits as if you were physically living it in that moment. To the subconscious, imagination is reality. This is why mental rehearsal is such a powerful tool for change. It allows you to step into the future before it arrives, to install new patterns in the brain and body that prepare you for a new life, and to break free from the old story you have been telling yourself. Every day, without realizing it, you are already rehearsing, but you are rehearsing the past. You think about old mistakes and your brain replays them as if they are happening again. You anticipate future failures based on yesterday's disappointments, and your brain wires them into your nervous system as if they are inevitable. You run through the same inner dialogue, the same scenarios, the same doubts, until they become second nature. This is mental rehearsal as well, but it is rehearsal of limitation. It is practice for staying exactly where you are. If you want to stop holding yourself back, you must consciously redirect this natural power toward rehearsing a future that is greater than your past. Mental rehearsal is the act of imagining with clarity and emotion the version of yourself you want to become. It is more than daydreaming. Daydreaming is vague, passive, and scattered. Mental rehearsal is deliberate, structured, and purposeful. It requires you to see yourself already living the life you desire, to feel the emotions of that life as if they are present now, and to repeat this process often enough that it becomes a new program for your subconscious mind. The science behind this is fascinating. When you mentally rehearse a skill, whether it is playing the piano, giving a speech, or running a marathon, your brain strengthens the neural connections associated with that skill. Musicians who practice mentally show measurable improvements in their performance, even without touching their instruments. Athletes who visualize their routines activate the same motor regions of the brain that fire when they are physically training. The brain literally changes in response to imagination. This means that if you repeatedly imagine yourself as confident, successful, and free, your brain begins to wire that identity as if it already belongs to you. But the brain is only half the equation. The body also learns from rehearsal. When you generate the emotions of joy, gratitude, or empowerment while imagining your future, your body experiences those emotions as real. Your heart rate shifts, your hormones change, your immune system responds. Over time, your body learns to live in that new emotional state even before the external evidence appears. In this way, you become the future before the future arrives. You no longer wait for something outside of you to make you feel free or successful or abundant. You practice feeling that way now, and in doing so, you create the conditions for it to manifest. Mental rehearsal also changes your relationship with fear and uncertainty. Normally, when you face a new challenge, the unknown feels threatening because your brain has no map for it. But when you rehearse that challenge ahead of time, you give your brain a blueprint. You walk through the steps in your imagination until they feel familiar. The next time you face that challenge in real life, it no longer feels so foreign. You have already lived it in your mind, and so your body and brain respond with greater confidence and ease. Consider the way a pilot trains in a flight simulator. Before ever flying a real plane, they spend hours rehearsing scenarios in a controlled environment. They practice what to do in turbulence, how to land in a storm, how to respond to emergencies. By the time they sit in the cockpit, they have already lived those moments many times. Mental rehearsal is the same simulator for your life. It allows you to prepare for your future self, so when the opportunity arises, you do not fall back into old programs. You respond as the person you have been practicing to become. The key to effective rehearsal is detail and emotion. You must see the scene in your mind with clarity, where you are, what you are doing, who you are with. You must also feel the elevated emotion that matches that vision, the joy of success, the gratitude of freedom, the love of living your purpose. When thought and emotion combine, the rehearsal becomes a powerful signal to the subconscious that this is the new reality. The more vivid and consistent this signal, the faster the brain and body adapt. At first, your mind may resist. Old thoughts will try to intrude. Old emotions will try to pull you back. This is natural. You are breaking the habit of being the old self. The important thing is not to fight these interruptions, but to gently return to the vision of your future self. Each time you do, you are strengthening the new neural pathways and weakening the old ones. Over time, the rehearsal becomes easier, more natural, and more real than the past. What begins as imagination eventually becomes identity. The more you practice being the person you want to be, the less you identify with the person you used to be. You stop rehearsing failure and start rehearsing possibility. You stop reinforcing doubt and start reinforcing courage. And little by little, the gap between who you are and who you want to be closes, until the future you once rehearsed is the reality you are living. There is a simple truth about human beings that most people overlook. Thought alone is not enough to create change. You can set goals, you can write affirmations, you can visualize the life you want, But if your emotions do not match your intentions, the signal you are sending to the world is weak, inconsistent, and easily drowned out by the noise of the old self. Intention without emotion is like trying to light a fire without heat. It has no spark. The energy that brings your thoughts to life is elevated emotion. When you align a clear intention with powerful emotions like gratitude, love, joy, or freedom, you create a magnetic force that not only changes your inner state, but also begins to draw new experiences into your life. Most people try to change from a place of lack. They think, when I have the promotion, then I will feel successful. When I meet the right person, then I will feel love. When I make more money, then I will feel secure. In this mindset, emotions are dependent on external circumstances. You wait for the world outside of you to change before you allow yourself to feel differently inside. But this is the very pattern that keeps you trapped. As long as your emotions are chained to the past or to circumstances beyond your control, you are reinforcing the old program. You are rehearsing more of the same. Elevating emotion means turning this pattern upside down. Instead of waiting for success to feel successful, you feel successful now. Instead of waiting for love to feel loved, you generate the feeling of love from within. Instead of waiting for freedom to feel free, you practice feeling free in this very moment. When you do this, something extraordinary happens. Your body begins to experience the future in the present. The subconscious does not know the difference between an emotion generated by an external event and an emotion generated by your inner choice. By feeling the emotions of your desired future before it happens, you teach your body to believe it is already real. This is not wishful thinking. It is a biological process. Every emotion you feel floods your body with chemical messengers. When you feel fear, stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline surge through your system, priming you for survival. When you feel gratitude or love, other chemicals like oxytocin and dopamine are released, opening your heart, strengthening your immune system, and creating balance in the body. Over time, repeated emotions signal the genes in your cells to turn on or off, shaping the way your body functions. In this way, your emotions are not just fleeting states. They are signals to your biology, writing the code of who you are becoming. When you pair an elevated emotion with a clear intention, the effect multiplies. The intention acts like the target, the direction of your energy. The elevated emotion is the fuel that carries that energy outward. Thought by itself is electrical. Emotion is magnetic. Together, they create an electromagnetic field around you that is coherent, powerful, and attractive. You literally begin broadcasting a new signature into the world, one that resonates with the reality you are choosing instead of the reality you are trying to escape. Think of someone who radiates confidence. Even before they speak, you can feel their presence. Their energy draws you in. Or consider someone who is filled with genuine gratitude. They seem to attract kindness and opportunities effortlessly. This is not coincidence. It is the natural consequence of elevated emotion aligning with intention. You already have this power. The question is whether you are using it consciously or unconsciously. To elevate emotion, you must learn to move beyond the familiar feelings of the past. Most people live in a cycle of the same emotions: worry, resentment, frustration, self-doubt. These emotions may feel familiar, but they are not elevated. They are survival states that keep you anchored to the old self. Breaking free requires choosing emotions that are greater than the ones you are used to. Gratitude is one of the most powerful because it tells the body that the future you desire has already happened. When you feel grateful ahead of the event, you are conditioning your body to believe in that reality now. Love, joy, and freedom work in the same way. They shift your energy out of survival and into creation. This is why practices like meditation and visualization are so powerful when paired with elevated emotion. It is not enough to simply picture a future, you must feel it. When you close your eyes and imagine yourself healthy, abundant, or fulfilled, you must summon the feeling as if it is already here. At first, this may feel like pretending. But with practice, the body learns to memorize these elevated states, just as it once memorized fear or stress. Over time, they become your new baseline, and your energy changes accordingly. Elevating emotion also requires a willingness to be greater than your environment. It is easy to feel joy when everything is going your way. It is easy to feel gratitude when life is comfortable. The true test comes when circumstances do not match your vision. In those moments, you have a choice to surrender to the old familiar emotions of defeat or to practice the elevated emotions of your desired future. Each time you choose the latter, you are teaching your body and mind that you are no longer defined by external conditions. You are defined by the future you are creating from within. Imagine the difference between two people working toward the same goal. One wakes up every morning, looks at their current circumstances, and feels frustration. They focus on what is missing, and they broadcast lack. The other wakes up, sets their intention for the day, and generates gratitude as if the goal is already accomplished. They walk into the world radiating possibility, and their energy attracts people, opportunities, and synchronicities aligned with their vision. Both are using the same brain and body, but one is bound to the past, while the other is broadcasting the future. Every person carries within them two identities, the one they have been, shaped by years of conditioning, and the one they are capable of becoming, waiting to emerge. The old self is a collection of habits, memories, and familiar emotional states. It is the identity that wakes up at the same time every morning, follows the same routines, thinks the same thoughts, and reacts in the same ways. The new self is not bound by those patterns. It is a vision of who you could be if you stopped surrendering to the past and began consciously creating the future. Living beyond the old self means choosing, moment by moment, not to fall back into the identity that has held you back, but to step into the version of you that aligns with your highest potential. The old self feels comfortable because it is predictable. Even if it creates struggle or dissatisfaction, there is a certain safety in knowing what comes next. Familiar emotions like worry, frustration, guilt, or doubt become addictive because the body has memorized them. They provide a strange sense of certainty, and certainty feels safe. But safety is not the same as freedom. To live beyond the old self, you must be willing to leave the comfort of the familiar and enter the unknown. This is the space of true change, where the old personality cannot follow you, and the new personality has room to be born. Think about how often people try to create change while still clinging to their old identity. They want success, but continue thinking thoughts of failure. They want love, but continue living with the emotional baggage of rejection. They want health, but continue rehearsing the feelings of stress and unworthiness. The old self cannot carry you into a new reality because it is wired to keep reproducing the same experiences. If you want a new life, you must stop being the old you. That means making different choices, thinking different thoughts, feeling different emotions, and breaking the cycle that has been replaying for years. This is not easy because the old self will resist. It will try to pull you back into the familiar through cravings, doubts, or emotional triggers. The moment you decide to meditate instead of scrolling through your phone, the old self whispers, "This is boring." The moment you decide to take a risk and speak up, it floods you with fear. The moment you choose gratitude when circumstances are difficult, it tries to convince you that you are being naive. These are not signs that you are failing. They are signs that you are succeeding because you are disrupting the program. Each time you override the old self and act in alignment with the new self, you are wiring a new pattern into your brain and body. Living beyond the old self requires becoming conscious of your choices. The unconscious mind will always push you toward what is familiar, even if it keeps you stuck. But the conscious mind can intervene. When you catch yourself about to react the way you always have, pause and ask, is this who I want to be? Does this action belong to my old self or my new self? That moment of awareness gives you the power to choose differently. And with every new choice, you weaken the grip of the old identity and strengthen the foundation of the new one. Your environment plays a powerful role in this process. The old self is reinforced by the places you go, the people you see, the routines you follow. These cues trigger the same neural pathways and emotional reactions, pulling you back into the past. Living beyond the old self means deliberately breaking these associations. It might mean changing your routine, spending time with new people, or removing yourself from environments that reinforce the old story. Each change disrupts the familiar and signals to your brain that you are stepping into something new. But perhaps the most important aspect of living beyond the old self is cultivating the emotions of the new self before there is any external evidence. The old self waits for circumstances to dictate how it feels. The new self generates emotions from within. If the old self feels powerless until something changes, the new self feels empowered because it knows that change begins inside. If the old self needs proof before believing, the new self believes first and allows the proof to follow. This inversion of the usual order is what sets creators apart from reactors. The old self reacts to life, the new self creates it. The process of becoming the new self is not linear. There will be moments when the old self resurfaces, moments when you fall into familiar patterns. This is natural because the old wiring has been reinforced for years. But each time you recognize it and return to your vision of the new self, you are reclaiming your power. The key is persistence. Transformation does not happen in a single decision, but in a series of choices, repeated day after day, until the old self loses its hold. Living beyond the old self also requires imagination. You cannot step into a future you cannot see. You must ask yourself, who do I want to be? How does that version of me think? How do they walk into a room? How do they handle challenges? How do they speak to others? How do they feel about themselves? The clearer this vision becomes, the easier it is to notice when you are falling back into the old identity and to redirect yourself toward the new one. Imagination is the blueprint, and action is the construction. Together, they build the new self. Ultimately, the old self is nothing more than a story you have repeated so often that it feels real. But a story is not a prison, it can be rewritten. Every time you step beyond the predictable reactions, every time you choose courage over fear, every time you align your actions with the vision of who you want to be, you are writing new chapters. The old self begins to fade, not because you fought it, but because you stopped feeding it with your attention and energy. The new self emerges, stronger each time you choose it, until one day you realize that you are no longer rehearsing the past, but living the future you once imagined. Change begins the moment you decide to stop living as a memory of the past and start living as a vision of the future. Every limitation that once held you back was never outside of you. It lived in your thoughts, your emotions, your routines, and your unconscious pattern. The chains that felt so real were nothing more than the habits of an old self, rehearsed so many times that they felt permanent. But nothing about who you have been is permanent. The brain can rewire. The body can relearn. The mind can imagine and the heart can feel a future before it happens. When you bring awareness to your invisible patterns, you take the first step toward freedom. When you interrupt the subconscious program and replace it with new choices, you begin to rewire your identity. When you mentally rehearse the life you want with clarity and detail, you prepare your brain and body for that future. When you elevate your emotions to match your intentions, you generate the energy that magnetizes change. And when you consistently choose to live as the new self instead of surrendering to the old, you cross the threshold into transformation. The journey is not about perfection, it is about persistence. Every time you catch yourself slipping into the old personality and choose again, you are reshaping who you are. Every time you imagine your future and feel it in the present, you are collapsing the distance between where you are and where you want to be. And every time you live from that elevated state, you are no longer holding yourself back. You are propelling yourself forward into a life that matches your true potential.